My guest today on the Essential Coaching Skills podcast is Debra Heslin, a certified master trainer of NLP, timeline hypnosis, and on and on. I really don't have time to tell you the whole resume. It's darn impressive, but only half as impressive as she is. You're going to enjoy this. You are listening to the Essential Coaching Skills podcast, a show devoted to uncovering the systems and the secrets that set the best apart, where you learn how to take your coaching clients to the next level while you grow the coaching practice of your dreams. So sit back and relax, or sit up and get excited. Either way, you might want to pay attention. This could be important. Hello, Debra Heslin. How are things down there in Florida?
Everything is beautiful, Doug. Gorgeous weather. Unlike you sitting by your heater.
I just happen to be sitting by the heater. This happens to be the orientation of the room. I'm not huddled by the heater because it's so friggin' cold here. That would be a misrepresentation, young lady. It just happens to be that I'm by the heater here in upstate New York. That is on because it's friggin' cold here. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
We did have.
Well, I also thank you for the young lady part. I appreciate that.
Very well.
Yeah. I caught that.
So yeah, and it should be said that you are such one of those nice people in the world that if I said, how are things down there? You pretty much always say it's wonderful. It's beautiful. Everything's, I mean, come on. Is it really nice? I mean, you're in Florida. Is it really nice?
Doug, it is gorgeous. I'm on the water. Boats are going by. It's like 75, 80 degrees outside. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
I'm going to Boston tomorrow where I know it's like 31 and really cold. So I have my Uggs already and my winter woolies, as they say.
Now, did you bring your Uggs with you from Australia when you moved over here, or did you buy them?
I don't think they had Uggs then because I came a long, long time ago in 1979. And I don't think they had Uggs then. We did have sheepskin stuff, but not Uggs.
Not Uggs. Yeah. So people probably figured out before I mentioned it that you are from Australia. What brings you over to our fair shores here of America? What brought you here in 1979? You moved over.
How long is this podcast? I came over here when I was 23 years old in 1979. So I just gave away how old I am, and I don't care. I'm pretty
People have to do math, though, so don't worry about it.
They do. I'm proud of the age that I'm at and things that I'm doing. So that's all good. But my dad was a preacher.
Oh,
so he came. Yeah, he was.
He came here for preaching.
He came to New York to save the New Yorkers.
Wow!
And
thank him for that. That's good. I feel much better.
Good. That's what I did. I came over to be with my parents, 1979, and stayed in New York for about 29 years. And my dad ended up not being a preacher anymore. So that's a long story, Doug. Okay,
well, we don't have to. We'll just gloss over that one then.
Yeah.
We'll just scoot right on by.
Thank you.
Somewhere along the line there, though, you started doing NLP, apparently.
Yes.
That would be an educated guess on my part. So when was that? When did you start getting into it, and how did that come to pass?
So, I will share a little bit about that because it's kind of a cool backstory. I was the general manager of John F. Kennedy for JetBlue Airways, actually, at that time.
Hold on one second. You were the general manager for John F. Kennedy Airport?
For the flight attendants for JetBlue Airways at John F. Kennedy Airport. Yeah.
General manager for flight attendants for JetBlue Airlines at JFK. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Correct. Yep.
Gotcha.
So don't ask me how I got the job. Here's this little Australian doing that job, but September 11th came, right? And I was on the last aircraft that left John F. Kennedy that day.
Oh my God! You were on it?
I was on the last plane. Yeah.
Oh my goodness!
That left John F. Kennedy. Yeah. Yeah. That was an experience.
Wow.
Needless to say. Yeah.
That's probably a podcast unto itself, isn't it?
Yeah, because it led me down the path that I'm at today. I mean, I think everybody has an experience that they experience from that, and things that happened to them or people that they knew around those times. So it was a pretty brutal time for a lot of people, right? The whole world was impacted. So I didn't get home for 6 days at that time. I ended up in Fort Lauderdale, and I was on a flight from John F. Kennedy to Fort Lauderdale. And of course, we didn't make it in Fort Lauderdale. So what ended up happening was maybe about 6 months later, I had what's called a panic attack on the aircraft, right? So I literally thought I was having a heart attack. And when they took me to the hospital in an ambulance, the doctor said, "There's nothing wrong with you. You're in perfect physical condition. You had what's called a classic panic attack." So that led me to get into yoga, right? And being able to release my stresses and things that I was holding on to. And once I realized that when I was doing yoga, I felt fabulous. And when I left the yoga room, I'd be right back in those emotions and things that I was holding on inside. So I went to a doctor, and lo and behold, a doctor in New York, and he said to me, I wanted pills to feel better, right? I said, "Give me some of those pills that make you feel better, whatever they were."
Those feel better pills, whatever they
feel
are.
better pills, whatever they are, give me some. Yeah. And he said to me, he said, "Debra, you're not depressed." He said, "You're really making choices or bringing in feelings that are not making you feel good." He said, "I suggest you go on a yoga retreat and start to get to know yourself." So that led me to a lot of the mind-body stuff.
I would like to know the name of that doctor. There was a doctor who said you don't need pills, go on a yoga retreat.
Yeah.
That's pretty enlightened for a doctor. Most doctors that I'm aware of go like, here's some pills. Do you want a double dose? Just by way of contrast, I 1999, maybe 1998, I had to have a hernia operation. I did. I had to have one. And while I was at it, I figured I might as well make it interesting since I was working at a hospital in the Department of Complementary Medicine as a hypnotherapist doing pre-surgical hypnosis. I said, well, let's make this interesting. Let's see if I can get somebody to do the operation for me without using any anesthesia. I'll just do hypnosis instead. Long story short, that is exactly what I did. And, but what was interesting is that, post-surgical pain management, the surgeon gave me a prescription for oxycodone. And thank God I took one and didn't like it, because, how addictive that stuff is. And people just give, doses. They used to at least give, prescriptions for that stuff. But, I just came across that prescription. I still have it in a desk drawer that's now in a storage unit. But I still have like 19 of the 20 pills left in this thing. I shouldn't tell anybody the whereabouts of that because.
Well, I say good for you, Doug.
Yeah,
good
well,
for
thank
you,
God. Yeah, thank goodness.
Yeah. So that doctor, going back to what you said, I honestly won't tell you what I said because it's not very ladylike, because I was a little annoyed that he wouldn't prescribe something for me. And I actually did curse at him. And I stayed in contact with him for quite a while because he gave me a book to read. I don't remember what the book was, but it was something about the mind, the mind-body connection. And that led me to just wanting to understand more as to why we do what we do. And why we think what we think, et cetera, et cetera. So that led me into, I did probably about 12 or so, at least, different certification trainings on becoming a coach. And I started working with corporate clients, and that led me on a whole different path. And then one day I took Jack Canfield's training, and I became one of his trainers. I was doing his Train the Trainer. And Jack said, "Debra, haven't you done NLP?" I was asking a question. And I said, like most people, "What's NLP?" Right? I hadn't heard of it before. And he goes, NLP is a must. He said anybody that becomes anything or wants to have conversations or wants to get past certain things has done NLP. You need to research it. So I did, which meant another training, and that led me down the path.
What year was that?
It's not that long ago when I did the NLP, maybe about 6 years ago.
Oh, 6 years?
Yeah.
Oh, my heavens.
Yeah, 6 years ago when I did the NLP. Yep.
Oh,
I was doing lots of other stuff around that without understanding why things were working. So once I found NLP, that was like everything just changed.
Wow. That's so, I mean, honestly, I thought you're so good at it. I thought you've been doing this for as long as I've been doing it. Wow. That's so interesting. 6 years ago. So Jack Canfield wasn't training in NLP. He just said that you should go get training.
Yeah. He referred to NLP in his training because a lot of the tools and techniques that he did in his training was around NLP, and now I can see it. At that time, I didn't see it, but now I can see it. So when I heard that and I respected him, I was like, okay, NLP it is. And, it was just another training that I wanted to do because I always felt something was missing. There was always something missing. I knew what to do, but I didn't always understand why certain things worked and what was actually going on inside between the ears.
Right. That's so interesting. And you had trained in coaching, you'd gotten a coaching certification at this point prior to learning?
Yeah, I had probably, honestly, Jack's it wasn't the last one I did before the NLP. I believe, if I remember rightly, I was doing his in like around April of about 6 years ago, and I already had like 15 different ones. Yeah, Jack training.
Oh.
Yeah. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to do the NLP, but I'd already signed up for about 3 or 4 other trainings. I'm a learning junkie. I really immerse myself in what it is I'm learning. I want to understand it fully and completely.
Yeah.
That way I can teach it.
One of the interesting things about NLP is it does really get into what is the structure of these things. In fact, a few weeks ago, I had as a guest Robert Dilts on this podcast, and he is one of the co-creators of NLP, as I know that you know.
Big fan, yes.
Yeah, as well, he should be. He's brilliant. And he was one of the authors of NLP Volume 1, the first book written about NLP. And the subtitle of that book is The Study of the Structure of Subjective Experience. So NLP in itself is not a technique. It's not a therapy form. It's a study. It's a study of the structure of subjective experience. Like, how does this work? What's going on in the brain that causes these changes or causes these stuckness or causes these phobias? What's going on that causes this? And that's one of the reasons I really think it is, like you said, it kind of a must. As Jack Canfield said, it's a must. It's a must.
Yeah.
So did you continue doing those kind of Jack Canfield coaching things? You're doing corporate levels, but just enhance them with NLP, or did you shift over to doing NLP, or what happened at that point?
Such a good question. Once I went to NLP, that just shifted my thinking completely, because it's kind of like what you said. I was now able to put processes in place as why something happened, and kind of the way that I like to describe it is freezing it in time and seeing exactly how what happened led to that, right? Led to that either behavior or outcome. And I look upon it as like looking at a TV, and you see something on the TV that you like. You might see an outfit or how a room is decorated or anything. And then you can freeze it and you go, how did this happen that it got to that? Like, what were the actual steps in the process that led to that looking or objectively or subjectively ending up that way? Mm-hmm. So that's what I really loved about NLP. It taught me how to put a structure around what the process was that created that result. You know, what was going on in the thinking, or what pictures or what language were they using, and what did the language mean to them, or to myself, really a lot to myself. It starts with the self. And, if I can say this, when you said to start off, Deb, with the weather, no matter what it was, you'd look at it positively. I used to think I was a positive person until I really started taking notice of what I was thinking and the meaning that went behind those thoughts. And then perhaps what state of being that put me in that led to that outcome. And maybe on the outside, it would be a certain way that it would look to others, but on the inside, what was going on the inside of me. And that's the part that I really started to understand with NLP, by changing some of your thoughts and what happened in that thought process around it that led to the outcome. You could really change everything.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, that's so very interesting. Thank you. I'm surprised I didn't know the answers to these questions. But it's fascinating to me.
Of course you did. You're brilliant.
Not about you. I didn't. So 6 years ago, you learned NLP from... I went to the Tad James Company in Las Vegas, and I actually researched the internet quite a bit and ended up going there. And then since then, I've studied under a lot of different people because I like to get curious on different ways people teach it, right? Or the way that they might interpret some things, just so that I'm well-rounded, right? I don't want to be opinionated. I want to open up to get curious about just the different ways it could be taught. And yeah. Cool. Yeah. Well, I ended up working for them. Actually, I became their head in-house coach and used to help a lot of the other trainers and people go through the NLP process, and traveled to Australia 3 times for them and helped the people over there become trainers. So go figure.
Wow.
Go figure.
So you went to Australia for Tad James. Did you take JetBlue and fly over there?
No, it wouldn't have made it. It wouldn't have made it. I took Qantas, Virgin, and Delta. Yeah.
Which was the best one?
Truthfully, I liked Delta.
Oh.
I liked Delta. Yeah, their Delta One. It was really good.
Oh, and then if you were lying, which one was it?
If I was lying, which one was it?
You said truthfully is Delta. So which one?
Good one, Doug. Yeah, truthfully.
If I was lying through my teeth, I'd say it was Qantas.
I was lying on one of their beds. I was lying on their beds.
Oh my God, you got a.
Yeah.
Oh, no wonder you liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah, baby.
I planted that in my future, and that came about. Thank goodness for my husband who paid for it.
It is a long ride over to Australia. So
yeah.
Wow, good for you. Good for you. So, you were a what trainer for Tad James? Did you say head and?
I was their head in-house coach for the United States. So
I
helped them. Yeah. So what I did is I actually worked remotely for them. So once I went through the NLP trainings, they have Australian offices and US offices. And they asked me, would I be interested in coming and working for them and coaching other students that went through the trainings, and all of them from prac, master prac, all the way through trainers training. So I was so grateful because I got so much experience. You know, I really got hands-on, in-depth, in-person experience to really get a thorough knowledge of everything. It was at my fingertips. And I got to meet people all over the world, right, that were doing these processes. So now I have fantastic interactions with these people all over the world. It was awesome.
When you say all over the world, did you travel all over the world, or did they come?
No, they would come. They would come from all over the world to the United States and from all over the world to Australia to take the trainings.
Nice. That's cool.
Yeah.
And now, of course, we see people all over the world, but it's like this, It's like,
isn't this great? Isn't this great? Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going back. I'm doing my own trainings, which I was prior to working for them. And now it's wonderful because people don't have to travel.
So
right?
Convenient. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have people in my classes I've had them from France, Mexico City, Peru, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and all over the United States. And I'm probably missing out a couple of places.
Oh, I know. Same.
Yeah. Right.
Me. Both in the trainings that I do and the coaching that I do. I have one of my coaches lives in Bali, Now, how would that have ever happened? Prior
Exactly.
to COVID, that I would have a coach client who lives.
Oh, Doug,
full time.
I've got to mention Bali to you. Before, when you were talking about the hypnoses and that, how I first went to a doctor to get pills to calm me down, right?
Yeah.
Now with hypnoses, recently I had some surgery done, and they were going to give me the anesthesia, and I said no. I said I'm going to hypnotize myself, right? So I went to Bali. And when I
in your mind, you went to Bali.
In my hypnosis, and I've never been. And when I came out, the nurse said, "So how are you feeling?" I said, "Oh my goodness, I went to Bali. It was absolutely amazing." She said, "Oh, you've been to Bali?" I said, "No, I just went." It was so great. So yeah, how much life has changed from doing this work.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's funny that story about going to Bali in your imagination for hypnosis. I did that as well. I didn't go to Bali. I went to Hawaii in my mind during the surgery, but it was kind of funny because I taught that technique to a woman who was, when I was working at Columbia Presbyterian with Dr. Oz in the Department of Complementary Medicine there. The woman had tons of pain after her surgery, which was odd. They didn't know why it was, but mostly it was because she'd had a car accident like 6 months before the heart surgery, and she had very bad whiplash. And then because she was immobilized by the surgery for so many hours, her whiplash pain came back. So it wasn't the heart surgery that caused her so much pain. It was the whiplash. So I did hypnosis with her and taught her this technique that I use about going someplace else. And, so she was fine. And after the thing was over, I expected her to go down like from, on a scale of 0 to 10, her pain was at 80 when we started, and it was 0 when we were finished. It kind of surprised me too. But a few days later, she had to go back in for surgery with Dr. Oz to get her pacemaker put in. And apparently they don't anesthetize for that, or maybe they didn't with her because she had such a bad reaction the first time. But I'm pretty sure for most people, it's an, local anesthesia, and then they, keep you awake and lucid to talk to you. So she was doing what I had taught her, and she had done this little self-hypnosis thing. And she was, down in Florida, like you, she was by the water watching the boats go by, and she was on her daughter's lanai or veranda or something, watching the boats go by. And so she was blissing out kind of thing on the surgery table. And Dr. Oz looks at her and goes, like, "What's going on with this woman?" And he says, "Mary, are you all right?" And she says, "Oh, yes, just fine. Just watching the boats go by."
I love it.
And Oz is
I
like,
love it.
I think
I know.
Brian is responsible for that.
They think you're a little out there, right? But why not be? Why not be?
So let me ask you this then.
Yes.
So all this stuff, all those certifications you took in coaching, and then you took NLP, and it sort of shifted everything. What percentage would you say you used? When you do coaching with someone, when you as a coach do coaching, is it like 60% NLP and 40% other coaching techniques, or is it what? I mean, I know it's just a rough guess, or how is it? No,
that's such a great question. Yeah. It's percentage wise, I wouldn't be too sure, but I would say that everything has the basis and the foundation of NLP to it. Like, as you know, I'm a Havening practitioner. I took my Havening from you, right? Yep. So when I do Havening with my clients, and some of them are NLP trainers, come and have Havening done with me, right? Mm-hmm. But it's how I'm then able to word it, my language around where they are, basically from where they are and what's going on, whether it's a trauma or anything, an event that's happened. I'm able to language them to take them from where they are to where they want to be. So the NLP has really helped me, as well as helped me with my students, language it so they're getting the results quicker, right? Because of how you're languaging what you're saying back to them. So that with going back to your question, I would say I use NLP with everything that I do, even my conversations with my family, right? My conversations with my family, my husband, right? My friends, myself. Doug, with myself, I'll catch myself and I'll go, yeah. Are you at the effect of that? Or, what are you saying to yourself there?
That's so great. It's so great. A few years ago, I was teaching the hypnosis course that I teach, but I was teaching it live back in those days. And I always showed these videos that I had recorded back in the day when they had VHS tapes and, VCR hooked up to your television. You had to tune the television to channel 3.
I remember that.
Remember that?
I do.
But it was like the 1992 presidential election. And I don't know if you remember, but that was Bill Clinton, George Bush the first, and Ross Perot was the third.
Oh, wow. I do remember.
There.
Yes.
Yeah. And there's a woman on the Bill Moyers show named Catherine Hall Jameson, who is friggin' brilliant. She's the head of the Annandale Foundation. That they basically do that. They analyze political advertising and political campaigns. They analyze what's going on there. Annenberg Foundation, I think it's called.
Right.
Something like that. Anyway, she is so smart and so interesting and so clear in her analysis of how these different advertisements work and stuff. And she said something that I just wanted everybody to hear. So that's why I recorded this passage and I played it for my students, is that language does our thinking for us. She said, language does our thinking for us. We erroneously believe that we, have an experience and then we find the right words, to describe it. But, most often we actually are putting it in language, and that frames it for us. That's how we come to think of it. That's how we come to experience it.
100%. I mean, it's the meaning, like you just said, it does our thinking for us. So it's like, what meaning do we give that which we are thinking, right? Which changes not only how do we say it to ourselves, but it changes our state of being, right? So therefore it changes our results. So it's not really the words. It's the emphasis we give to our words. I always remember with Jack Canfield, when I first learned about that he was doing NLP, to me, no, just kidding. Right. That he said, if I were to say to you, Debra, you have, I love your green hair, right? I don't have green hair, by the way, but it would be how I would take those words, what I would do with, what am I thinking about those words that is being said to me. So the thinking of those words, if I go, what are you kidding me that I don't have green hair? What's the matter with him? Or if I take it as that was a joke, it wasn't a great joke, but it was a joke, right? It gives it a whole different meaning, which changes our state of being. So what we are, language does our thinking for us. Yeah. I love that, because then what are we thinking becomes how we end up acting and behaving. Yeah. Most of the time it's out of control.
The real usefulness for that is twofold. One is how you listen to the way the person is representing the world to themselves. NLP is all about the representational systems, but we look out there and we see this world, but we represent it to ourselves, or we represent it to ourselves, and the pictures that we make in our mind and the way we talk to ourselves. But that way that we talk to ourselves about that, the way we present that, comes out in our language, and the way we literally, the words we choose to talk to ourselves about things, the tonality that we say it with. Yeah. So we said, "Oh, that's terrible."
Right.
Right. Yeah. Or like, that's terrible. Same words,
exactly.
Has different meaning. So very important to listen to your clients, how they're using the language, how they're representing the world to themselves, how they're talking about their future, how they are doing all this stuff. And then it's also, number 2, critically important to pay attention to how you talk to them. And if you as a listener can discern, for instance, one of the NLP things I was teaching just today in one of my online classes about meta programs, if you can discern that if a person is a sameness person or a difference person, or a sameness with exception or difference with exception, if you can discern that meta program, then you can talk in the language that they need to hear for themselves. You can talk in the sameness language that they hear. Well, this is just like this. And see, if you do this, you're going to get the same results you've always gotten. It's going to be great for you, don't you think? You just put it in the sameness language that they want, or you put it in the difference language that they want, if you've listened to it. And then if you have the ability to therefore, speak in that language, if you will.
100%. Yep.
Yeah.
And I love those meta programs, those complex meta programs. They're absolutely fantastic. And then, it's asking too around that, what specifically does it mean that they're saying, or what does that mean to you, and understanding the words. I remember working with a couple that it was coaching for a couple, right? And she was going through her values of like what's important to her in the context of their relationship together, right? Mm-hmm. And her top one was secure, right? And so I turned to him and I said, why don't you ask her what that means to her?
Okay.
And so she turns to me and she goes, he should know what that means. Right. So I said, why don't you tell him what it means so that we see if he knows and you're speaking the same language. So she went through, to be secure is that he only has eyes for me, that when we're out, it's just him and I together, that we're doing things together. We're agreeing on certain things that we want to do to grow our relationship. So I turned to him and I said, is that what you thought it meant? And he goes, nope, I thought she wanted financial security. Mm-hmm. So if we're miscommunicating, right, on the meta, that was the meta model, not the meta programs that you were talking about. Mm-hmm. But if we're disagreeing on one word, right, imagine how much else we're not communicating or miscommunicating.
That's
right?
great. Yes. Oh my God, that's so true. It's just a single word.
Yeah.
That is completely divergent belief about what that meant.
Right. Yeah. Which ties into the map is not the territory. And
is yes, indeed.
Right. Yeah. Is this PG?
It's a presupposition.
No, it's a presupposition. Correct. That's all right. That's all right.
Shouldn't be talking to a trainer.
Is this PG, Doug? Is this PG? Because I want to tell you. Yeah.
Oh, you can.
It's not going to be. I'm going to be fine, but I want to tell you a funny story with a client that I have. Say it to
you this way. Do you know Melissa Tears? I've had Melissa Tears on here, so yeah,
awesome.
More than once.
Okay, good. Because I'm a grandmother, right? And my grandchildren actually say, "Nanny, you curse more than anybody in the whole entire family." But I'm not going to curse. I just want to say this one thing. I was working with a client, beautiful, beautiful woman, and she had broken off her relationship with who she was dating, right? And it was her choice. She didn't want to go out with this person anymore. And she decided whatever, it was enough now, and she wanted to move on. So all of a sudden, after 3 years of dating this guy and enjoying this guy and everything that went along with it, she suddenly decided in that moment that he took advantage of her. Meanwhile, she was the one that was breaking it up, et cetera, et cetera. So she said it, if you want to think about what we're talking about, the meaning that she put behind that, those words, he took advantage of me. I could see through my learning of NLP how her with sensory acuity, everything changed in her face. She got this certain look on her face and she tensed up and, her scowl on her face, et cetera, et cetera. And she went, he took advantage of me like that. And so I said to her, oh, how interesting that's the belief that you now have of what happened over the last 3 years. I said, wouldn't it be fun if we just changed the meaning of he took advantage of me into a different meaning, right? And she goes, what do you mean? I said, well, think about it for a second. Say it in like a seductive way, or just give it a different tone of voice and change your state of being, like put a smile on your face and like, maybe put your head down and flutter your eyes, right? So she did. And she goes, he took advantage of me. And it gave a whole completely different meaning to her, rather than her getting she wanted to end the relationship, but what happened is she wanted to give herself a reason to end it.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Rather than it was okay. It was over. It was over. It had run its course, and everything changed for her, like in that moment around the language that she was giving, the meaning she was giving that.
Well, what did you just say? The language?
Language, how we gauge our language.
Oh, wow. I've never heard that before.
No?
No.
You learned something from me, Doug.
Well, it's about time.
It is about time.
Inside joke there.
Yeah. We're even.
Oh, dear. So,
we're even.
So, yeah, we're even. So, when people ask, based on the title of this podcast, the essential coaching skills, what would you say then? I mean, I know we've talked about quite a few, but what would you say would be, if there was one NLP skill that was essential for being a good coach or a great coach, what skill would that be? What would you say is an essential coaching skill from the world of NLP?
Yeah. Well, you were right when you said, I know there's a bunch, because there is. So I will answer your question with just one. I think for me, it's actually recognizing what they are saying to you, what you can presuppose they have said to you in their statements. So for me, for example, if it's a cause and effect statement that they are saying, he makes me sick, or he makes me angry, or et cetera, then I would look for what would be the main presupposition in the sentence to be able to take them from where they are to a different way of thinking in that particular moment, right? Or it could be a complex equivalence, as this means that, right? So I always look for the presuppositions. What are they saying? What can I presuppose that they are saying in their sentences that I can then take and dissect it, so to speak? Break it up as what you said before, the subjective experience, to change it into what could be as a different experience for them, right, by using the language. So language is, we all speak English that are listening to this podcast, but we speak different dialects, and so really understanding what it is that they are actually saying or not saying to you. So really listening. So the presuppositions of language
and
are crucial for me.
Listening for the beliefs that are there, the presuppositions is a
correct.
Belief. But what you're talking about, the structure of beliefs there, that sounds like sleight of mouth to me, baby.
Yeah. I love your sleight of mouth. Are you kidding? I love it. That's where I first met you, I think, on sleight of mouth course that I took.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, very cool. So you now do trainings of your own. You do NLP certification courses.
I do. That's correct. Mm-hmm. I teach them now virtual. I used to teach them in person, but now with virtual, it's fantastic. So they're done online. The next one is in January. It's 7 days.
January of 2022, for those of you who might be listening.
2022.
Someday.
Already? Yeah. Yeah. We do 3 a year. The second one is in May, but the next one is in January. And it's all virtual. They're long days, but it's all content. And the content is absolutely fabulous, because I'm looking at continually updating so things that were taught maybe back in the 70s. How do we apply it today too, in business, in coaching, et cetera, et cetera? But I want to say one thing. We also have a fantastic pre-study that we're doing also, that's done with this master trainer that I know. And
really? What's that?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Full disclosure, yes, we're working together. So, the course and study that I've been teaching online is also going to be used for a pre-study for your courses. So what you're saying?
Correct. Yeah. Yes, correct.
Which is pretty cool, because I will tell you, I stopped doing certification courses in NLP for a variety of reasons. One is that to really do quality is really hard these days. Not just these days now because of COVID or whatever, but, in recent times, it has become harder and harder to really, in a sense, convince people that quality is worth the the time and the money and the effort.
Mm-hmm.
I literally saw an advertisement on Facebook the other day. This is literally true, for an entire NLP certification course. I think the price was a whopping $7.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's correct. If it was more than that, it wasn't much more than that. And
wow.
It's probably around 4 days maybe of content or something like that. Just by contrast.
Wow.
by contrast.
For lack of a better word, wow.
Yeah. Back in the day, back in the early days of NLP, with Bandler and Grinder both teaching, both of them together teaching, it took you 28 days to get a practitioner training. 28 days. It took you then another 28 days to get a master practitioner training. My first training, when I took it from Tony Robbins back in 1985, was a 15-day training. And if anyone listening has ever been to a Tony Robbins training of any kind, yes, it was like a 24-hour day. They were.
I've been to his trainings. I know.
This is 15 days of that. 15 days of getting up at 7 a.m. to jog or do yoga, and then have fruit for breakfast, and then jump off a pole or something, and then you'd have the morning session that would go till 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then you'd have lunch until 2:30, and then you'd have the afternoon session to go till 10 at night, and then you'd have dinner, and then the evening session would go till 2 in the morning or 4 in the morning, whatever. And then you have 15 days of that. So they were long days. Let's just suffice it to say.
Very long days.
And I've been to, like you, other trainings as well. When I was at the Tony Robbins training, he brought Tad James, was there. Edward Small was there. Bandler came. Robert Dilts did a day or two. Lots of people were there. Dave Dobson was there. So I figured, gosh, if they're good enough for Tony to bring here, they're good enough for me to study with too. So I went and did trainings with each of those people.
That's great.
And and by the way, big fan of Tad's. Tad, I thought I learned a lot from Tad. I know some people had some criticisms.
Amazing.
I thought
amazing person. Amazing. I always remember I'm interrupting you, but I will continue to interrupt because I just want to say this. Tad, when I first met him, or actually not when I first met him, but when I graduated as a trainer, he looked me fair square in the eye and he said to me, Debra, when is your first training? And so my eyes must have moved in every direction. And Tad, in true Tad form, said, one person is a training, Debra. You're qualified for it. So I looked at him and I went, January, I think I said January 26th or something, right? And he says, good, let me know how it goes. And that was what I did. First training was one person, and I didn't care because I kept learning more as I went, developing more and more and more as I went. I'm a geek like that, Doug. I just love to study and get really good at it.
So for me, just getting back to me for a minute, if you will quit interrupting me, it's my podcast.
When did you decide it was your podcast when I came on? Go ahead.
For me, I when I was teaching NLP certification courses and master practitioner certification courses, I would do 14 days. 14 days of, heavy lifting, some real deep work, some real slogging stuff through things. But I wanted to get that same quality across that I got from Tony and got it from the other people that I studied with, Tad, Wyatt, etc., Robert Dilts. And it's just harder and harder to fill those classes. People just, don't want to take that time. Why should I take it with you for 14 days if I can get it for this guy for 4 days? I mean, and plus he's cheaper than you. You're charging all that money for all those days, So one of the reasons I've said yes to partnering with you is that you maintain that level of quality, and you do it by, I think a thing that you learned from Tad is to have a lot of preloaded front end learning that can be done online and through the books, but not just, hey, let's hope you did this work, but it's like there's testing involved and people go through this material, and it's kind of the basics of the material that they can get online or by watching videos or reading books, etc. And then you take them through a 7-day training?
7 days. Yeah. 7 days. And the hours are, so I love what you said, because not only with the pre-study and the pre-learning and the prerequisites, so to speak, that they're getting with your work, it's detailed. So they're getting so much more than they would get elsewhere, which I love that. And they're learning from you, right? Who has also studied with lots of different people. So it's not just the one realm of how we learn. And then this is the way that it is. There's a whole platform of curiosity and how you can apply it and what you can use it for. So then the 7 days with me, they actually get to practice with people in the classroom.
Yeah.
So they learn, they see it done as a demonstration, and then they go to practice in that realm for all the stuff that really requires you to be certified.
I really appreciate that. And I don't mean to turn this podcast into anything that even slightly looks like or sounds like a commercial. That's not at all.
Me either. No.
But I just want to say that that's you got to practice. It's got to be practicing.
100%.
When I was a piano teacher, I'm a pianist, but I also, besides performing, I also taught lessons for years. When you teach piano, it's not about like what a great teacher, wasn't that a clever metaphor I used or whatever. It's about how well do the students learn it. Yeah. How well can they play the piano once you've taught your lesson? They need to be able to demonstrate the ability. And that's always been my kind of, model for training anything, sleight of mouth, hypnosis, anything is, can the student then demonstrate the ability? Can they do it themselves? And take it away and make it their own. There's not a prescribed way of doing it, but they're learning kind of the basics of how it works so they can generate. Right. And one of the things my partner Kevin and I used to do is at the end of the trainings, people made up their own patterns.
Yeah.
One of the testing criteria is, can you make up your own brand new, never done before?
Yeah.
NLP pattern.
And that's the fun part about it, is when you have that understanding, you can take this from this and mix and match. And it's like a recipe, The other day I was doing something with, I don't know if it was a student of mine, because, I don't just drop my students either. I love this. I live it. I feel like it saved my life. The truth be known, if we had more time to go on to my story, I really feel this work on just structuring what the things that I'd be saying to myself transformed everything that I do. But I was talking to, I think it was a student, and we were writing down. I have my little board that I copied from you from one of your classes that I write on with my magic marker, right? And erase it out. I love that board. But she was saying something that was, a limiting belief or a negative thought. And we crossed that out and asked her what she would like to believe instead, right? So we wrote down that belief. And then with that, what did she see? What did she hear? What did she feel? What did she taste? What did she smell? What was she saying to herself around that? And then just made it brighter. Right? Like just increasing all that, the intensity around that. And I was like, oh, wow, that sounds like a linguistic swish. Do you know what I mean? Right, so it was just fun to go, that's what I'm doing. Yeah. Nice. Yeah. So, you can really do anything when you have the understanding of what X causes Y,
Right. Which is why actually, Debra, I would say I disagree with your metaphor. It's not a recipe. It's learning the structure of how to cook. Right. So you're inventing with what you got. It's like walking into a kitchen and saying, I have a recipe for this, but there's none of these ingredients are here. What are we going to do?
Good point, Doug. Good point.
See what's in the cupboard and make something up here.
Yeah.
And then you create a feast with, the materials that you have at hand.
I love that. I'm going to take that metaphor, because what would happen if you added this ingredient or this ingredient, Yeah.
Absolutely. And that is kind of the point. I think, the shorter trainings, you might learn some good recipes. You might learn how to make a tart or a tort, whichever you prefer. But you won't necessarily understand why torts are the way they are, and what or a tort. And how you can make an apple tort, then you make a pear tort, then you make an apple, go further from there. What if you have different sorts of apples? Do you have to change the recipe? It's all different. It's all, being in the present moment with the present circumstance or present person. Milton Erickson used to say everyone is as individual as their own thumbprint. So
that's right.
Anyway, that's right. So Debra, I know that we are almost out of time for today. I appreciate your time and your being here.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Doug. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
But how much time would you need to tell your story? I want to hear that story about how NLP saved your life.
Oh, we could do another one if you want.
Another
podcast.
Oh God, you need that much time?
It's going to, my story is like, really, it come from this little place. Yeah. But it did save my life. It changed my thinking, and it changed me from all my panic attacks and, completely. Nice. Everything.
Well, I will admit, it had a huge influence on mine. I would go so far as to say it saved my life as well. I also was having panic attacks and things, not because of 9/11. I started much earlier with my panic attacks. Yeah. I started much earlier. But yeah, NLP was instrumental.
Yep.
In
when my daughter was sick a couple of years ago, I really believe that without the NLP that I had learned and teach and everything else, that I think that I would have handled it completely differently. And then for my children, my other two daughters, to say to me, Mom, the way that you handled this, I want to learn from you.
Oh, really?
When you have your own granddaughter that's taken your training and your daughter wants to take your training, it's all the NLP skills and tools, where I've made so many mistakes as a parent, but now the tools and techniques that I now know how to do has changed everything. It's incredible.
It is pretty incredible.
It's incredible. Yeah.
Hey, what else do you teach? You teach HeartMath too? And
I teach HeartMath. Yes. HeartMath is another wonderful tool that basically has a lot of the foundations of NLP in it, which was wonderful when I went through it. I teach that. And what else do I teach? I think that's it.
Okay.
Yeah. The HeartMath, which is really about putting yourself in NLP. We call it congruency, right? In HeartMath, it's a coherent state where we put ourselves into a coherent state. So we're able to get ourselves to a neutral position to then decide what it is we want to do. So it's breathing. And, one thing's for sure, all of us are breathing. It's how we're breathing, right? Mm-hmm. We're no longer here on this earth when we're not breathing. So There's one thing that we all do is breathe. And are we breathing really to help ourselves, like either short and shallow or with anxiety? We often hold our breath, right? Right, like this. So it's not useful or helpful. So these tools, yeah.
Okay, great. And how can people get hold of you, Debra Heslin, if they want to do that?
They can find me on my website at DebraHeslinWellness.com.
Could you give us a spelling for that, just in case?
Sure. It's DebraHeslin Wellness, WELLNESS.com.
Are there any spaces or underscores or anything?
Nothing. It's all one word. Debra Heslin Wellness, .com. Yep. Nice. And I'm happy to answer any questions or whatever. I love this work, Doug. It's not work, right? Right. When you love it. Yeah.
It's always a pleasure to see you and always a pleasure to talk to you, Debra. So thank you so much for being here and sharing your story, a little bit of at least. So we'll have you back. I want to hear that story. I'm really big into stories. I think stories are incredible for teaching and for communicating. People's brains work that way. So we want to hear it. If you're willing to tell it to us.
Sure. Yeah. I haven't really shared it publicly, so that'll be a first. But, absolutely. I'd love to.
We look forward to hearing all about that. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Doug. It's really a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Pleasure's all mine. Well, that's our show for today. Thank you so much for joining me. If you want any more information about today's show, please visit our website at www.essentialcoachingskills.com. Be sure to tune in again next week for our next episode and discover even more about the systems and the secrets that set the best apart.